20 minutes before 7 here on the program, Telkom CEO Sipho Maseko has written an open letter to South Africa's political leaders. In it, Maseko states that government needs to release spectrum to mobile operators so value can be unlocked by technology players. Maseko also urged government to take action in order to participate in the fourth industrial revolution. Morning Live invited the CEO of Telkom to come into studio to talk about his open letter, but unfortunately had other commitments and therefore declined to come in. Hopefully he'll come in a later stage. However, joining us now is Willington Ngwepe. He's the CEO of ICASA, that's the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, to talk about Maseko's letter, as well as many other issues regarding technological progress in the country. Good to have you. Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Morning, Leon. Thanks for having me.
Quite a profound letter that was written by the Telkom CEO, taken out in ad space across newspapers, Sunday newspapers. Talk to us about your reaction after seeing that.
Look, I think from our perspective, we certainly welcome Sipho's letter. So I think from us, there's two issues that he's raising. The first is the need for us to have a conversation around how we get the country positioned to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution and the opportunities that it presents. So from my perspective, it would really be about having the conversation around the policy choices that we need to make to ensure that everybody in the country exploits the opportunities or takes advantage of those opportunities that come up. So that's the first part.
I need to get a bit of an understanding, because, I mean, some of us don't understand the technological jargon that's used there. But let's have a look at this this whole issue of opening up. Help me out here. I'm even losing words. Spectrum.
Yeah.
So what does that actually mean? What are they asking for?
So I think Sipho and the industry in general is saying that government needs to release the spectrum that's required to enable the industry to deploy broadband infrastructure, so that everybody can have access to high quality data services and high speed quality. So in essence, if you were to ask what spectrum is, I would say spectrum is to the mobile industry what water is to the agricultural sector.
Yes.
So it's the lifeblood of the industry. Yeah. So without spectrum, you would not be able to have the kind of networks that would enable you, that would enable the industry to provide the broadband services at the quality and at the speed and at the prices that the country would like.
Yeah, and that I think he's touching on such a big issue, because the reality is that as South Africans, we are lagging behind. We are, when it comes to, I'm only going to compare us to the rest of the continent, you know, in terms of pricing, in terms of speed, in terms of access. What is the problem? Why are we not up there?
I think the challenge primarily would be around spectrum, if we were to put it blindly. So the reason why we have not been able to roll out the kind of broadband infrastructure deep into the rural areas that perhaps other countries have, especially for the mobile sector, is primarily because they don't have access to the required spectrum, and there's been a lot of delays, at least at the policy level, for the release of the spectrum. And I think what Sipho is saying is that perhaps it's about time everybody sits around the table, let's have a conversation, let's overcome the impediments that have been there and get the sector moving speedily.
Yeah, but whose responsibility is this? Are we saying it's government's fault for not releasing this spectrum? I mean, it looks like the infrastructure is there. We heard all about cables, and we all had our roads turned upside down, and we've got these operators that are here in the country, and yet nothing seems to be changing.
Yeah. I think if you were to ask to the question about whose fault is it, I suppose primarily I would say it's government and the regulator. So you would recall that in 2016, ICASA took the initiative to license the spectrum, specifically the spectrum that's suitable for the rollout of broadband infrastructure. And at that time, given the differences with the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, we were taken to court, and the court said we must wait. And it really revolved around, at least from government's perspective, it really revolved around government saying, we want to change the policy landscape. We want to come up with a new policy for the sector, and we think it's inappropriate for ICASA to proceed with the licensing of the spectrum before the policy is finalized. Yeah. And the policy is now finalized. However, we haven't quite moved, and there's a lot of conversations going on about how we effectively implement that policy and in the process also facilitate the release of spectrum.
I mean, when we look at things, and it is very, it's upsetting when you look at a country like South Africa that, you know, people look to it as you know, a business hub here in Africa. And yet, when we look at global indexes, South Africa ranking 46 out of 79 countries in terms of progress and performance made in broadband, data centers, cloud services, that's not good. I mean, that really isn't good. I mean, we can't be proud of a figure like that, can we?
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
And I think given where we are and given the nature of the country and the economy we have, we should be doing a lot better. However, when you look at the overall country, and I think you mentioned the issue around the roads being dug up and infrastructure being laid,
yes,
you would find that there is a bit more concentration of deployment of infrastructure in urban areas, so the so-called metros, where I suppose the economies of scale and the revenue attractions for operators are quite high. But that is not duplicated or rather replicated in the marginal areas, and I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if we even just let's go further and talk about costs, though, because that's, I think, our biggest problem here is the cost of data. I mean, I know that many people have done comparisons between us and the rest of Africa and how we're performing. And I mean, just looking at a couple of the countries, you look at Egypt. It's the cheapest. We can't even compare to Egypt when it comes to the cost of data. Ghana's better, Tanzania's better, Nigeria's better, Kenya. South Africa is sitting at least $3, if not $4, more expensive for data than any of those countries. Why?
You know, the challenge with benchmarks is that, there is no science behind them. So it depends what's being compared. So no countries are ever identical, right? So we'll start there. But even if you go into a benchmarking of data prices, again, it will depend what packages are you comparing? Are you comparing likes with like? But it's not about us saying that we're better. I think the reality is that we're not doing as well as we ought to be.
Yeah.
And it is an area of intervention that ICASA has prioritized in terms of making sure that at least in the short to medium term, we get the necessary regulatory interventions to drive prices down.
I'd like to believe you, and I would like to believe you, because we were really excited by the fact that you guys were coming out and ICASA were making these rulings towards the cell phone operators. I mean, we look at Cell C, who have taken you to court now with regard to all of these datas. MTN have jumped on the bandwagon as well. But the reality is that, you know, the rules that you've come up with here for data is basically saying that the network operator must tell us when there's 50% left, 80% left, and 100% left of data. Give us the opportunity to transfer from one consumer to another on the same network of data. Another thing is you can't charge out of bundle rates without a consumer's consent. I don't, however, see the price going down. I don't see data being extended for me on my contract for the rest of the month onto the next month. Where did that go wrong? I mean, many people are basically calling you guys over-promising but under-delivering.
So the one thing that is included in the interventions that you've mentioned, which you didn't mention, is the rollover of data, which is exactly to be determined by the cell phone network operator. Fair enough. So I think there's a phased approach to the intervention. So the first phase is really around the transparency rules, which is what we have come out with, to say in terms of their business rules, there's certain practices that have been of disadvantage to consumers which needs to change, and that's what we came out with. The second phase then talks to the need for specific market reviews to determine the bottlenecks in the value chain in the provision of data and come up with the right pro-competitive remedies, which may include price regulation as to what operators ought to charge. So that phase will start as soon as we finalize the process on the identification of the priority markets. And one of the key markets that's been identified is the mobile services market.
Okay, unfortunately, I've got to leave it there. I'd love to talk more, and I'm sure the viewers would like to hear a lot more about this, but this is just an update. Willington, please visit us regularly, because we need updates all the time when it comes to this. As you say, data to everybody is like water to agriculture. We need it, and we need it flowing very, very fast and cheaply, please. Willington Ngwepe, the CEO of ICASA, joining us, talking to us about various issues with regard to technological progresses made in the country. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. I know it's one of South Africa's favorite conversations. #data must fall. All right, we've got a public protector with us.